بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين اللهم آمين. Inshallah ta'ala, today we are starting a new series of discussions about the subject of Al-Aqeedah. And just to do this today, inshallah ta'ala, is an introduction to the series, and just to break it down for what we have in mind. That under the title or under the banner of Aqeedah, we are going to hold two series. The first, which is this one, which serves as an overview of the Islamic belief system. Not really in the traditional way. You will find that, inshallah ta'ala, our presentation is more dealing with intellectual issues that are facing Muslims, addressing the Islamic Aqeedah from the point of view of a human being who is coming to see what should I believe in, if any. So we are going to rely on certain rational foundations and to reach our conclusion. And that will be the first series. So the first series set of discussions, inshallah, will be about probably 5 sessions or so. And we will discuss certain subjects such as what is Aqeedah? When we talk about Aqeedah, we're talking about the Islamic belief system. What is Aqeedah? Do human beings need a Aqeedah? Do we as human beings need a belief system? And if so, how can we reach it? How can we reach it not in a way that is purely emotional, or in a way that is not structured intellectually, rationally, but rather in a way that we can be certain that it will lead us to the right conclusion? We will discuss the Islamic belief system, the Islamic Aqeedah is specifically. Again, not in the details that some of us who have read some of on this subject might be thinking about. That will be, inshallah ta'ala, in the second set of discussions, or in the next series, in the detailed one. But this one, it'll be discussing the fundamentals, the foundations of the Islamic belief system. Why, how we believe in God, how we believe in the Creator, how we believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how we believe in the Qur'an al-Kareem, how do we base our belief in the Day of Judgment, in the unsensed, angels and devils and hell and heaven and accountability, etc. What are the articles of beliefs that we're supposed to have, and how do we prove them? How do you actually approach it in a systematic way, so that you can reach that this is a valid belief system or not? So we will discuss the foundations, and then as I said, we'll discuss the Islamic belief system. And this will be pointed, or the discussion will be really revolving around specific major issues. Without their validity, Islam would be invalid. And if they are valid, then Islam will necessarily be valid. The second series that we will be discussing will be more detailed discussions about some of the items that we will have discussed, inshallah ta'ala, in this series. But it will discuss other objects or other subjects. The subjects that are raised often, and especially in the common, in the nowadays, when they discuss the idea that the discussions that are raised by atheists. So we will take some of the main arguments of atheism, and we will refute them, inshallah, and we will discuss them. We'll discuss the idea of scientism, the idea of making science, experimental science, as the foundation for all sources of knowledge, the only valid one. Why? Because it's experimental. So we will discuss its validity, its sphere of existence, its limitations, when do we consider it valid, when not valid, etc. So we will discuss such topics. We'll discuss things that result from scientism, the idea of Darwinism, the idea of, or the theory of Darwinism, the theory of, whether the Big Bang theory, whether, some of the, again, the main items that are used by atheists to discuss this. We'll discuss also some philosophical ideas that relate to the belief of God, such as the issue of evil. The saying that, well, if there's a God, how could there be so much evil in the world, etc. Certain philosophical arguments or certain thoughts that are introduced to answer the idea that, or the thought that there is a creator. So we will address those, inshallah ta'ala, and we will take it from there. So the first question that comes to mind is, do we need to discuss this topic? Do we need to discuss the issue of something called aqeedah, something called belief system? Do we need to put it as a subject for discussion? Why don't we just leave it and discuss other things that pertain to our daily lives and how we can succeed in life, or just how to live our lives in whichever way? So is there do we need to discuss this? Of course, to answer this question, we have to first answer the question, what is aqeedah? What do we mean by aqeedah? Of course, we're translating it as a belief system, but the word aqeedah, in reality, and this is not the Islamic Aqeedah only, this is any point of view in life, any aqeedah, and when we say aqeedah, comes from the verb aqada, which means to form a knot. So basically, you emotionally, intellectually, you form that kind of knot around certain views of life, about life. So when we say aqeedah, we don't necessarily mean only the Islamic Aqeedah. We mean any belief system, any idea about the existence of the human being, about life, anything everything that's around us. The nature of the topic of the aqeedah or the belief system is that it is encompassing. It is discussing not certain aspects of life. What food can I eat or not? How should I dress? Or when can I defend myself or not? These are all, as important as they are all partial things. But when we talk about a point of view in life as a whole, life in its entirety, that's really the realm of aqeedah or the belief system. So how do we view the universe, where it originated from? And when I say originated, I don't mean how it actually technically, mechanically came to be. Is it the Big Bang Theory or something else? But what, where did it come from? Is it, how did it come to be? And we as human beings, what are we doing on this, in this universe, on this planet called Earth? Where did we come from? We notice that there's something, life. So life, and even though we don't sense life as in intangible life that you can touch, you can feel or smell, but you do know its existence, its presence, when you see its manifestations, a living organism or a living being moving, growing, these are signs of life. And then you see when life is absent, you see the absence of those manifestations. So the idea is, well, if there is life and we see it starting and we see it ending, well, how did it start and how does it end? And when it ends, what's after that? Is there something after that? So we are now alive and we are talking, and that's one sign of being alive. We are alive, we're talking, and we're listening, so the question is, once that ends, and it will end for just like for everybody else, it ends. When it ends, what happens after that to us? That the view of life, of the universe that we live in, of the human beings, and how we interact with all of that exists. This is really the idea, the understanding of all of these things, is what is called aqeedah. So you find different belief systems, different ideas about how all of this came to be, what will happen after it ends, if they believe in end, and whether it will go away or not. But definitely regarding the human being, or regarding living things, that okay, once life ends, they have to have a view of it, whether the view is, oh, there'll be a day of judgment, and these rational beings, or human beings, will be questioned for their beliefs, or the idea that nothing will happen, we just live our lives and then we go to the dirt, and we just become part of the soil of the earth, and that's the end of that. Regardless, that's still a point of view. That's still a view of what life is. So you have one view and you have another view. So when we say the belief system, this Aqeedah discusses all of this, then now the question is, what are the consequences of the answers? Because again, we're answering the question, do we need to discuss this? Is there a need for it? And I'm saying, okay, if this is Aqeedah, if this is the belief, the point of view about life, how we view life, its origin, where it's heading after, afterwards, what is the relation? Is there something before the universe? Is there something before life? Is there something before everything that existed? Is there something after it? And if there is something before it or after it, is there a relationship? What's the relationship? These are huge questions, of course, fundamental questions in the life of the human being. And so do we need to discuss them? Well, we need to discuss them if what results from them is that there's going to be an impact on the way that we live. So for example, if we reach a conclusion that there is a creator before life, that there is accountability, that there is a day of judgment as Islam dictates, so automatically then the impact is that how do you live? So in other words, you need to know what to have a point of view about life so that you can live your life. It's not only that we worship the creator, which is innate, and we'll discuss that inshallah ta'ala in the next session, but in addition to that, it's how to live. So now if somebody says, well, there are certain belief systems that address life and they do not give you the way to live. They might give you some rules, basic rules about being kind to your neighbor and not to steal and not to do bad things, etc., in this limited aspect. And I would say then that's a deficiency in their response. That's a deficiency in the answer. So not to say I have a point of view about life not necessarily it does not mean that every answer provided is necessarily correct, right? So we're talking about the way to live your life. So even when we say, look, you don't really need to discuss any of this. All you need to be, just be a decent human being. Just live nicely. Don't harm others. Don't just live nicely and worry about yourself. Okay, and then that's fine. But then we have to ask, what does nicely mean? So now somebody says, well, I will just live and worry about myself. If you want to worry about yourself, that's fantastic, and you can live the way that you want, but you really never live alone. You have relationships, you have dependencies, interdependencies. You have parents, you have children, you have neighbors, you have school, you have jobs, you have a society that you're living with total strangers, literally sharing the roads and sharing the supermarkets and renting from them and buying from them and selling to them and interchanging, having relationships with them. So that relationship, how is it going to be structured? How it's going to be governed? So when we say just live, be kind, be nice, how do you define that? How long, in the relationship, is it that this, even regardless what they do, that I should live nice and I should be nice to them? So if somebody takes my money, should I still be nice to them? No, you should get it back. Well, how should I get it back? How should I structure this relationship? Should I worry about only a certain amount? Should I go and take it by force? Or should I, again, it's when you start going in the details, these big slogans about just be nice and live, peacefully, and be kind, become really nothing but slogans. Not that we are saying, as Muslims, not that we're saying we don't do that, but we're saying that's well defined for us. Keep in mind also, the human being has certain instincts, certain needs. We are out to preserve ourselves, right? This instinct of survival, and that has many manifestations. One of them is selfishness. So if I want to, for example, if I want to, out of the, just for the instinct of survival, just to make sure that I'm protected, I'm enhanced. Somebody, you know, I go to work and I'm late, and my manager asks me, you are late. You know, I tell him, no, actually I was not late, because now I'm afraid of losing my job, losing my income. Again, my self-preservation comes in, you know, and I'll say, no, I was not late, actually. I was outside, or I was at the copy machine, and I was doing this and I was doing that. I just lied. Why did I lie? White lie, black lie, it's a lie. Why did I just lie? It's again to preserve myself and protect myself. But then, is that okay? Is that okay? The human being will rationalize and will tell you, you know, what is a small lie like this in comparison to losing my job and not being able to support my children, etc., etc. So I'm saying that we'll always be able to twist what we're supposed to, what we say we should do, being honest and being truthful and not harming others, and, you know, when our self-interest comes in. So unless this small idea of you know, honesty as an example, or truthfulness, is firmly rooted in our point of view in life, that I have a more, you know, much bigger view about life that makes me go into to be honest. Not honest for the sake of honesty, not honest because it's nice, not honest because people will say that I am honest, but it is because inside, you know, I'm tying it up to or with the entire view of life, or my, you know, and what happens after it. So in other words, what I'm saying is, we need to discuss the Aqeedah and the point of view in life. What kind of how do we view life, the universe, the human being, what happened, how do we came to be, and where we're going? We have to address that, because really our values and our rules that we set even for ourselves will not be firmly rooted, well established, you know, unless we tie them to something that is bigger and has more meaning to us. Not that we will never go against them, but we're talking about the consistency, the level of consistency. We're talking about the long-term commitment to these ideas. They will require this. And I just give a very simple example to show the difference. If you are in the street and you are totally alone, you know, and you see a wallet on the you know, on the floor, on the ground, you know, there's nobody around you, you can pick it up, you can take it, you can take the money and go with it, and that's it. And that, by the way, most people would do just that. They just take the money and walk away. But me, as a Muslim, as somebody who believes in my point of view in life that there is a creator who's watching me and will question me for this money, did you earn it or not? Did you get it in the way that I specified you should get it or not? And there will be accountability on the day of judgment, because I believe in the day of judgment, that there will be accountability, and there's, based on that, there's going to be heaven or hell, etc. You know, then automatically it's not mine, I don't touch it. Why? It's haram. As a Muslim, I would say it's not allowed for me, it's haram. And therefore you would leave it. And so you see where the difference is, versus somebody, even if they're Muslims, but really the belief system, let's say, is not well established in them. They'll come and say, you know, I need it. They'll justify that behavior, again, because that point of view about life is not deeply rooted. So why do we need it? Why do we need a point of view in life? For one, at least for now, to say that, how are we going to live? We interact with the material of the universe. You know, we survive based on what the universe has to give us. Planet Earth gives us fruits and vegetables, and gives us, there are animals on it. And so the question is, as a human being, I need to know, what should I eat? What should I drink? Can I eat anything? Can I drink anything? You know, how should I dress? How should I interact with others? All of these, what are their rights on me and what are my rights on them? All of these things actually result from that point of view about life. And again, if that point of view of life does not cover them, does not provide you such answers, comprehensive, detailed answers for your day in and day out, then you don't have a proper point of view in life. You have one, but not the correct one. That's one. The second thing, if the point of view in life comes and tells you, you do what you want, and resulting with chaos in the society and harm inflicted upon people by others, then again you need to question. So what I'm saying is, there's a difference between having a point of view about life, a belief system, and having the right belief system. So we need to identify how that belief system, is going to be reached, and that inshallah ta'ala will be next session بإذنه عز وجل. So if this is the case, then where are we starting? How am I going to approach it? As and one author put it, you start by, if you think that you just wake up one day and you are on an island, right? Then what's the next step from there? What are the questions that are supposed to be raised? How do you raise them? How do you answer them? And really, pretty much, we are on earth, and the question is, if we are going to answer these questions about the origin of life, where we came from, where are we going, is there something before life, is there something after it, is there a relationship between both? If we're going to answer it, then we have to see what do we have. What do we have? Well, what we have to start with, we have senses. Now, when I say we have five senses, we have five senses, and they're all well known, and everybody agrees on them, that they exist. It is the taste, the smell, the vision, or the seeing, the hearing, and the touch. So you have five senses. So when we say how do I know that there is a universe, where there's planet, there are the plants, there are human beings, animals, the sun comes from the east, the west. This is all sense. You can sense its presence, you can sense its absence, etc. And so what we know is really exclusively is coming from the five senses in terms of what we are going to think about. But the next thing is, what we see also, what we notice is that this universe, that whatever is under our senses, is actually functioning harmoniously. It's not bits and pieces of things that exist and they are scattered. Here you have a human being, and then you have a cow, but there's absolutely no relationship. There is no system. There's no structure that puts them together. So you find that there is a harmonious system. You have the sun rising from the east, setting in the west. You have when we see the moon and when we do sun, we don't see the moon, and the position of the moon and how it influences the oceans. We see that the sun at a certain distance from the earth, that if it is a little bit closer, the earth will burn, and if it is a little bit further, the earth will freeze. In other words, you will have no life. You will have no life if the sun is not in its current position. You will have no life if the moon does not have its cycle. You will not have no life if there is no glaciers, and there's no water, and there's no, because the human being needs a certain amount of temperature to survive. We need water to drink. We need, and not any water. We need H2O. We need 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen for us to drink it. Not 2 atoms of hydrogen, 2 atoms of oxygen. It has to be specific type of water for us to drink. We need the sun, the heat to be at a certain distance. As I said, certain amount of heat we can take, certain amount we cannot. We will die. We need certain foods. We don't eat everything that exists. We eat certain things. So that is the system, the harmony that exists, where there is interdependency, where there is a setup in place that permits that makes this universe function in the way that it does, that the human being functions in the way it does, animals function. There's a cycle of life that exists. All of that again indicate that there is something, a system that governs it. So how are we going to analyze this? How are we going to pass judgment on this? How are we going to judge what this means? That we sense, everything under our senses. We sense all of this, and then we see that the system they're going in harmony. How do we analyze this? And of course, the faculty that we have to do that is thinking, is rational thinking. And when I say thinking, I mean it at most basic level. I do not mean logical thinking in the Greek type of approach. I don't mean scientific thinking in its strict sense, and we will come to it inshallah ta'ala when we discuss that. But when I mean that for me to know what this is, I need to sense it. That's the first thing. So when I sense it, I'm touching it and I'm seeing it, and now I'm hearing it, and I come and I look at it, and I say, okay, this is an object that I have in my hand. What is this object? Then I need some information that explains, oh, this is a cell phone. Okay, so this is as simple as basic, of requirements for me in its most basic way, what thinking actually is. You pass judgment, you pass a verdict, you pass an idea about a subject matter that's under your senses. So if I want and again, to emphasize this or to demonstrate this further, if you take a piece of gold and you give it to a child who does not know the value of gold, has not taught it, has not studied the gold, does not have information about gold, they'll see that this is an object. It has a sparkle, it has a glare, some glare, some shine in it, and then but that's about it. Will not know the difference between that gold and this silver. We will not know the difference between gold, silver, and regular stone, even though and they might that child might leave the gold and silver and take the stone for whatever reason, because again, there is no way to judge for the child that this is gold and it has certain value and it has certain attributes, etc. But once you learn it, then you start, with no question about it, you're going to take the gold or not. You cannot pass judgment that it's gold unless you have that previous information. If you are reading a book in a foreign language, if it's a Greek language or Chinese language or Japanese language, unless you learned it before, you can sense it, you can see it, you can touch it, but you are not going to be able to determine, okay, this is what this letter means, or this is actually a letter. All you'll see is just writing, of some different shapes on a piece of paper. So again, thinking, what we are going to use to judge reality is the ability for our ability to think about reality. So in other words, we are going to think about these objects, and we are going to say, okay, what are they? What's the where? How? We start asking these fundamental questions about them. So now, of course, this is thinking, let's say, in the abstract, in the sense that in the basic thinking, but it is also important to remember, and this is just inshallah ta'ala will not take much longer, but it's important to remember that there are certain basic ideas, basic givens that we human beings have. And if we do not agree on them, if we do not admit to them, really you cannot discuss anything at all. So for example, some of the basic ideas, innate ideas, the innate part of a child will have them without education. So it's not something that's a learned knowledge, an acquired knowledge. It's actually innate. For example, the part is smaller than the whole. So if I take an apple, a quarter of an apple, I cut it, the apple, it is common sense, it is innate to the human being that the smaller one, that part is smaller than the whole. If I tell you, and you can do that with a child, that the one is smaller than two. If you have two children, you give one of them one toy and you give the other two toys, that the first child will be looking at you like, why are you unfair? They will recognize immediately that, no, I should have like that. They might not be able to count 1 to 2, but they will know that this is less than that. There are also certain fundamentals that, for example, anything that has a start is made. Anything that has a start is automatically made. And this is something that's given, because if it is after it wasn't, then automatically the question is, how did it come to be? Because you are not going to have something that starts itself. It does not start itself. There is, if anything starts, it means it wasn't and now it became. And if it now, if it wasn't and now it became, it means somebody made it. The idea that effect requires causality. That, for example, if you are for an object to fall, it does not fall by itself. It falls by some force, some cause that made it fall. If objects move, there has to be a force that pushes us to move. That effect, the move, is not going to happen without a cause. These are basics. The idea of the impossibility of having two contradictory facts. I cannot tell you I am here and I'm in China at the same time. I am here and I'm in China at the same time, because you are either here or not. I cannot tell you that I am here and I'm not. I am alive and I am dead at the same time, because that is unacceptable to any rational person, and this is innately that given. You don't have to go to school to know this. You don't have to study books and read books to know this. All you, a normal person, a regular person, will come and tell you that you cannot be, you cannot exist and not exist. You cannot not exist and then make yourself to be, because how can you make yourself if you weren't, right? So these are, again, are parts of the basic intellectual things that are put in the human being, and we'll discuss about them, inshallah ta'ala, how they became, how they came to be. But the idea here is that you have certain fundamental ideas that you use for your thinking. Without this, you cannot reach any conclusion. To think that things make themselves. When rationally it does not make sense that you do not exist and then you make yourself. Where is the will? Where is the action? Where is the actor? Where these are prerequisites for it. Contradictory facts, that somebody exists and somebody does not exist. Somebody has a start and does not have a start at the same time. All of these things have to be in our minds when we address reality, when we address the things that we will be thinking about. So when we think about these things, anything that's composed of parts, it has a whole. Anything that's composed of parts has a whole. So in other words, if you say that the body has certain parts, automatically you have an entire body. If you can take any item and you make it into parts, eventually you will come to a point, to a whole. Now somebody will come with mathematical arguments to tell you no, such as the number of infinity, and you can cut it into smaller ends of infinity. And this is all theoretical math. This is not actually intellectual or real life or real life thinking. Rather, there are mathematical equations, and mathematics by definition it does not deal with the judgment over realities in this sense, but in figuring out equations. And that's, we'll discuss it in the second series, inshallah ta'ala, when we talk about the scientism and these things. One last item, when for any productive way of thinking, for any productive thinking about the universe and how we are going to approach what we can sense, is not to start creating hypotheses, not to start creating what-if scenarios, hypotheticals, so that you can say that, well, what if, yes, you can be in two places at the same time, because what if the universe actually has its dark side, what they call the opposite of it, and so you are here, but at the same time you are there. And what if they invent a time machine that takes you in two different time zones at the same time? And what if you'll only get what if responses? If it is not under your senses, it is not really, it can have another realm of discussions, but it is not, if it's not under your senses, How can you pass a judgment on it? How can you pass a judgment on a hypothetical scenario that, well, what if they made, the universe has multiple universes, and actually you exist in all these universes, in one form or the other. What these arguments and these hypotheticals, you can't. You can't address them because, again, they're hypotheticals. If you give me a reality, you give me something that I can sense, something that's under my five senses, and then I have some background to explain some information about what I'm sensing, then I can give you an answer. But if you tell me that, what if there were this or that, then the best we can do is sit and speculate together. You can sit and shoot the breeze and barbecue and whatever, and you can say what if, and we'll give all kinds of answers for what if. But at the end of the day, these are not actually intellectual arguments, not for or not the questions themselves, and not the answers, for sure, because they're all going to be speculations based on speculative questions and scenarios, etc. Okay, so this is really what for today. This is what I wanted to discuss. This is just to set the ground for our discussion next time, about when we start thinking about the human being, about the life that we live, about the universe, and we start actually moving to say how they came to be. How can we reach the conclusion that about their status, whether they were made, they're created, or they they evolved, or they how they came to be. So and that gets us to the idea of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But today I just wanted to lay the foundation, and I tried to be to simplify it as much as I can. Please let me know if you have any question or any comments. Any comments, or should I quit while I'm ahead? If I'm ahead. وعليكم السلام. وإياك أخي زياد. Okay, جزاكم الله خير. And inshallah ta'ala, next week we will start with our first subject of discussion. If there is anything that comes up, if somebody watches it not live and they want to send us a question, or just please post it online, and inshallah ta'ala at some point it will get to me inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير.